You know, it really isn't a pleasure being a centre-right Australian like me, or a conservative or right-wing Australian like many who watch and listen to this show, knowing that your main political party is moving away from you, as the Liberal Party has been for the past few years, at least at a state level. But to pick up the Melbourne Age newspaper this week and read that a young Victorian State Liberal MP thinks Menzies is dead and the party needs to forge a new path, just confirms that the party is wedded to the appalling strategy of shifting left that has caused them to lose 9 out of the past 10 elections that they've contested. Matt Back is the Shadow Education Minister in Victoria. That means he is not a backbench member of Parliament, but a senior one. He sits on the front bench on the Victorian Parliament, on the opposition side with his fellow Liberals, and if they do manage by some miracle to win government one day, he would presumably become a minister in that government. He wrote in The Age, "Menzies is dead. It's time for the Liberals to forge a new path. Clinging to the legacy of a government first elected 84 years ago is not a viable strategy for winning elections and governing." This is the progressives' argument that everything new is better than everything old. This did not impress some elder Liberals. Menzies is the father of the party, a party that he put together out of 14 Conservative and centre-right parties in 1944, once he concluded that his own party, the United Australia Party, was at the end of its useful life. He believed the country needed a strong, united, non-Labor force. But what are the Menzian values? What does that mean? Well, I put this question to a man who was the son of 2 Liberal federal ministers and who himself was a Liberal state premier and a Lord Mayor, Campbell Newman. And I put the question to him in the first episode of the Other Side interviews earlier this year.
It is not a move to the right to say taxes should be low. It's not a move to the right to say that people should be encouraged to set up their own business, to employ people, to actually make profits and actually be able to keep those profits or a large share of those profits. And that's about incentive, because that's how we do grow the economy and employ people. That's not right-wing crazy stuff. That's very sensible stuff.
They talk about Menzian values. I mean, you hear, because Robert Menzies was the founder of the Liberal Party in a sense, and there is this view that, you know, he had this core set of values. What are the Menzian values?
Well, why don't we start from a bit of a quote? Now, this is a book that was put out by the Liberal Party about 20 years ago.
It's called The Forgotten People, which is interesting.
And it refers. It's a publication which covers a whole lot of speeches Menzies gave on radio. They're radio addresses back in the 40s when he was in opposition. So Labor Party had government, and he gave these speeches, and this is one from 22nd of May 1942, and so it's 81 years ago almost, right?
Wow. Okay.
And I'm just gonna this is what he says, where he's defining who the Liberal Party should be representing, and he says. He makes some exclusions. He talks about essentially, unions and who are being, unionists are being looked after. He talks about, big business, and he excludes them.
Okay, so corporations and unions, the working class being looked after by the unions.
He then says this, I include the intervening range, the kind of people I myself represent in Parliament, salary earners, shopkeepers, skilled artisans, professional men and women, farmers and so on. These are in the political and economic sense the middle class. They are for the most part unorganised and unself-conscious. They are envied by those whose social benefits are largely obtained by taxing them. Yes. They're not rich enough to have individual power. They're taken for granted by each political party in turn. They're not sufficiently lacking in individualism to be organised for what in these days we'll call pressure politics. And yet, as I have said, they are the backbone of the nation. As it was in 1942, so it is in 2023. That's who the Liberal Party and the LNP should be supporting.
Former Premier of Queensland, Campbell Newman, speaking to me back in April. The full interview is available on the ADH TV app. It's episode 201I of the Other Side interviews, our Tuesday night interview show. Those values are still important. What isn't truly liberal is the way the Victorian Liberal Party is failing to support family values, stand up against the hideous breaches of civil liberties during COVID and the politicisation of the police force that we saw under Dan Andrews' Labor. It might be a good idea for Matt Back, a former history teacher, to dig a little deeper on history. If you enjoyed that content, there's lots more where that came from. The Other Side Australia is back every Tuesday and Friday on ADH TV and all good podcast platforms. It's your weekly short circuit summary of the best news commentary from Australia and abroad. Don't miss it.